and so we're not repeating things, and being respectful and understanding what people are saying. Then we transition to our languages. So expectation is to grab your things that you need so that you don't have to come back and get them. So being responsible, we've talked about looking at, they need to have either their French or Arabic notebooks, they need to have their supplies, whether pencils or scissors, anything, they need to have it with them at all times, and they need to be responsible. So I kind of create that expectation in the classroom. They're not allowed to come back into the classroom. We have when we are doing, like in the classroom, we have norms of how we go to the bathroom. Since we have a bathroom in the classroom, they use a signal. So it doesn't disrupt the entire class, and I just give them a nod, yes or no. Then we have, if they need sharpened pencils or erasers, I do have extra, but a lot of the times they're supposed to and be responsible for their own at their own desk. And they're responsible for, their things. We get into groups, so we talk about how being responsible for others. So they're in groups throughout the year to help with that. When the students come back into class, they are expected to get out their snack, and they get out their snack while I read a book. They read quietly. So those are the expectations for snack time. Then we do that for about 5 or 10 minutes. Then we get into reading. I do a whole group reading lesson. With the whole group, I do a whole group reading and then a whole group writing lesson. And within those, it's usually something that they're going to be working on during their small groups. And so about a half an hour of whole group teaching, I get into small groups for differentiation. And we work on reading stations, and they have expectations of how they transition. Usually when I say switch, they transition, and they have about 10 seconds to transition. So we do countdowns for transitions, whether it's getting in line or getting started with their daily routine. So yes.
Thank you. So during my first week, it's going to be in March. I chose one standard to talk about, which is an ELA standard that focuses a lot on character traits. This is my unit plan template that has all the lessons in it. So this is the standard, describe in depth a character, setting, or event in a story or drama, drawing on specific details in text, character, thoughts, words, or actions. So I'm gonna focus more on the character traits and teach the student using different strategies and different activities that they'll be moving around the classroom. Sometimes we're going to use the board outside. We're going to use a lot of technology, and I want to know, when thinking about that, I want to know more about your students, and I want to know what kind of differentiation I need to do, because I know there are different kinds of learners, and I want to know if you have ELL learners, SPED learners, and things like that.
So within the classroom, there are, I've got a few ELL students, and a lot of the times using a lot of pictures helps them, using actions with new vocabulary, being able for them to do it as well, to have them repeat it after you, and making sure that you're having them repeat it as well, and asking them questions, making sure that they understand. With some of my SPED students that tend to not stay focused or are blurting out, I tend to ignore a lot of it, but I also redirect, and I say, we need to focus, we need to pay attention. I redirect in different ways, so whether it's people around them that are paying attention and focusing, I say, so-and-so has their eyes on me, and that usually tells it to the person next to them that they need to be looking at me as well. But with a lesson, I do a lot of call and response. I do reminders of, okay, I want you to just shout out at me, or give me a list, or raise your hand and tell me. I usually give them reminders all the time of raise your hand and tell me this answer. and that usually helps as well without the blurting out. With students that are a little bit higher and that have that higher understanding and are always raising their hand, I kind of say like give others a chance as well to kind of have them talk about it, but then give others a chance once we've gotten into it. Then also I sometimes have them turn and talk, so they turn and talk to their group or to their partner, and that kind of gives them a little bit more of a voice as well.
Yeah. Do you have any gifted and talented students?
Not that are identified.
Okay. Thank you. So this is, like I said before, this is my lesson plan template. I'm going unit template actually. I'm gonna leave it with you. You can check it out and tell me your comments on it, what things I need to change, what things are going to work in your classroom, and let me know.
Okay.
That's okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much. So, when talking about me and teaching in your class, do you have any expectations for me?
Expectations of just to, let's see, getting to kind of maybe come and observe me and see how I'm teaching, so it kind of goes fluidly within the routines, within the expectations as well. And just kind of being able to kind of slide in with your lesson and kind of talk about it, and as reviewing or like pulling in from background knowledge, I do that a lot. And so I think just what you have right now is good, and we'll see.
Thank you. And I know that you talked about reading groups and that you're differentiating between like higher groups, medium groups, and lower groups. And do you do that in other like subjects too?
Yes. So with reading, I do differentiated based on reading A to Z levels, and then I put them in the groups. And during the group session, I do about 10 minutes for each station, a little over 10, 15 minutes. And I have them, one group is with me, then the other groups are either working on writing or word work or reading. So they're reading independently. And so I use my whole group lessons, and then they're practicing in their small groups independently. But then after lunch, when we come back from lunch, I have them do spelling tests. So we've used Word Your Way to differentiate with spelling and where they're at with their phonics skills. So with their reading time in the morning, they're using that time to practice the words. But then after lunch, I give them, I introduce new words. I also test them on words that they've been practicing. And so we're working a lot on understanding phonics so that they can help them with their writing. Then with math is usually, I do a whole group lesson as well. And I differentiate by doing small group math stations depending on the time of year. I do some games that they switch up. Sometimes I'll do 15 to 20 minutes working on different stations, and then we switch. Mostly it's students are working independently at this time of year where they're working independently at their desks, and then I'm pulling small groups to support them with things that they weren't understanding at the beginning of the year, whether it's addition, subtraction. So we're going back over those things, making sure they understand it before we move on. But I'm also simultaneously teaching the 4th grade standard as well. Yeah. So filling in those holes.
Well, they need that.
Yeah. With science and social studies, I differentiate with a lot of pictures, a lot of review of vocabulary, because the vocabulary is important. And so I usually start my lessons off with vocabulary, and I'm constantly doing different things to differentiate whether we're moving with the vocabulary or looking at pictures, learning about it, asking questions about it, drawing it. We do a lot of different things to differentiate.
One more thing I want to talk one more thing I want to talk about actually is the rubrics, because you're going to be using a rubric to grade me and see if I'm doing everything correctly. This is the rubric, and for the first week or the first couple of weeks, I'm going to focus on 2 to 3 standards, which are, the first standard is learner development and also learning differences. So, do you have any advice for me when it comes to these standards, to how apply it in your class?